Hello, how you doing?
Hey, hey, you got a real scenic background this time.
Yeah, yeah. We're prepping for a race tomorrow. So today we wound up
Yeah.
traveling last night because the tides were way too hard to do during the day. So I'll work from Friday Harbor today. Not a bad background.
Hey Steve, hey Alex, good to see you all.
Hey,
You
likewise.
too. Nice to have you back.
Thanks. I was up in New York a couple weeks ago. I guess everybody's doing their
Ooh,
summer trip.
was it the weeks that it was ridiculously hot?
Yes.
Uh,
It was hotter in Manhattan too.
my daughter who lives in Philly, came to Seattle for the week. It was horrible on the East Coast and beautiful in Seattle. So it was perfect.
Nice. Chicago winters are pretty bad, so I'll take it. I'll take the summer heat.
It could be Minnesota, Josh.
Right.
There's there's nothing worse than the wind coming off that lake in Chicago in the winter.
Yeah. We don't go outside too much. Hibernate.
Hibernation mode. Yep.
Caves. Everybody gets in their caves.
Robert's from
Norwegian, yes.
Arctic, so
He's like, you wimps.
I feel a little bit ashamed because my last name is Scandinavian, and so you'd think I'd be a little bit more hardy when it came to winter weather.
Yeah, and it was actually like your name that was literally happening here right now. We had really bad weather. Not now though. Now
It's
everything's fine.
gorgeous.
It's perfect.
Oof.
Oh,
You guys are killing it.
So that's also this is also awesome. You know.
I think we already have pretty good showing here. I think we could wait until our three after before we jump into the agenda if unless anybody wants to just has an itching need just to start talking about artifacts right now.
Well, I'm gonna
Yeah,
be
yeah.
I'm gonna have you on my ear, but I have to I just parked a rental car and now I have to lift drywalls up the floor too because I guess that's fun. Not really, but so I'll be only listening in. Have fun.
I think we're at three after. I think that's kind of like our soft meeting start time. So let's get into it, yeah. Um, Jumping into the wrong agenda. I apologize. Okay. Thanks, Josh. There it is. Josh has posted the agenda in chat. I've confirmed that his link works. Okay, so as with every artifacts working group meeting commencement, we take a moment to invite new attendees to we don't have any new attendees, so we can just skip that, and that also lets us skip the context of the meeting, so that's good. So yeah, I think I see everybody in the agenda here. So if you have anything you want to talk about, let's throw that on here. And Josh, you had recommended that we take carve out a part of the meeting for like a roundtable or like a show and tell or
I just was gonna, like, in some of my other meetings, I just try to tell people, if you want to bring a new idea to us, people should feel free. So the past couple of weeks, I've talked to a couple different people about things that they want to pursue within artifacts. Whether that's, distribution mechanisms or packaging mechanisms. Another person was talking about VM images in particular and pulling in Python packages. And I just basically told them, like, this group is here, just we might be focused on a certain area at this point. But if you are interested in something and you want to pursue it, open a GitHub repo, bring it up in a meeting, and hopefully you might even bring some people along with you in this group. So I just wanted to encourage that.
Awesome.
Know that
Okay.
I talked with a couple of people. They're not here today, so but FYI.
We'll get them. We'll get them in here one way or another. Pretty sure of it. Artifact seems to touch everybody, so. Okay. Real quick, we just want to just go over real quick. We had some outstanding admin items. I think Josh, you're going to be like the pretty much the go-to for these things.
I'll give you a quick update.
Okay.
Yeah, so the GitHub repo, I needed to open that service desk ticket. Sorry about that. And I did. So hopefully that will be in the next few days. We need a process to get Alex and Ram properly on board so they can request, but that's a tag level governance, which we're working on gradually. Sorry. And then the other thing, I'm sorry, Ram and Alex, I'm pretty sure everyone agrees that, the tag leads, but I need them to sign off on that PR so I can merge it. Thomas looked it over and +1, but he didn't approve the other PR. So I'm pushing them, sent them another note this morning. Hopefully that will happen soon.
Okay. I think the only thing that didn't get, we still don't have a lot of context around add working group information to the tag website. We were waiting on the website restructuring before we were going to engage in that. Do you have any more context to share about like what we need to do there, Josh?
Yeah, that's actually done. So there's now it's organized by working groups. There's an operators working group and a platforms working group listed there. We should just add in artifacts. Just follow a similar pattern. It's a Hugo, I think, is the framework. So if somebody wants to pick it up, yeah, just add the stuff to the homepage of the repo, I think, and then copy what exists for platforms within the Hugo. It's in the website directory. I can, if somebody wants to do it and needs a little help, just reach out to me. Or Leanne Lee has been kind of leading the effort on the website, so you might ask her also, and I'm happy to support you.
Okay. Is there anybody who's particularly deft with Hugo here who could start off with a good basis, or if there's not, then that's something that I can pick up.
It's
I
just
don't know
markdown, right? It's just markdown, I think. So it should be okay.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, just
I'll
mark down
find
with some special
I'll find
tags and
something you
goofy
can
stuff.
copy. I'll paste in there something you can copy to get you started.
Perfect.
Okay. So I think that pretty much gets us, you covered the repo creation. I think that's all but everything's been done there except for just them creating the repo. And I don't think I see. Okay. Is there any, are there any other admin concerns that anybody like to bring up here as far as things that we've overlooked or something that's coming down the pipe that we need to be cognizant of going forward? Just real quick about on the topic of admin, working group administration.
I think one question I'd have is, once the repo gets created, do we want to transition from the Word doc to issues and PRs, or?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think that's actually a great segue into our research update. I saw Ram put this into the meeting chat, and this document has come a long way since I saw it yesterday. So that's encouraging. Really great collaboration or engagement here. Seen several people engaging within this document. And just so you guys know, I just put links because I don't know about all of these, but I just tried to find links to as references for each of the section headings, and that was essentially the majority of my contribution. But I will say, as a side note, somebody had asked me, or maybe he had even lightly dissented with this notion that we're engaging in this research, had asked me why we're doing this. And I think, Kyle, are you on here? Here. Yeah, okay. You brought up something that I thought, I think it was, yeah, this need of a catalog endpoint, being able to enumerate packages. I think that really highlights why we're doing this. I think that's saying like, this kind of goes into, okay, well, we need this search capability because without that API, like we're not going to data model ourselves out of this problem. We need something else that facilitates those interactions. So I was just kind of giving my 2 cents on that, and then I wanted to hand it over to the group to kind of discuss like the research that they were doing, and talk about like the good, the bad, and the ugly here, and how we can continue iterating on this and improving this process.
If someone has reached out and given feedback already, that's already a pretty good first step, if you ask me, Sam.
Yeah, I mean, and even critical as it was, I think it was still helpful. As at least for me, it was constructive in identifying why we're doing this and kind of taking a different perspective as I was reading the document. Yeah.
I think it might be worthwhile to talk about the columns of that table and make sure we have enough columns and what they mean, and make sure we are clear on all of that so that as we fill them in, we're capturing the right information as we're iterating over different tools, different package managers.
Yeah, so I put the table in mainly as a TLDR, and also as a place where interested parties can onboard themselves. So it's more like an invitations/iteration kind of thing. So, but you're right. I mean, we need more columns. I can think of a few of them that I missed. So, but if you have columns that you want to, feel free to edit them.
When we say package type, I was kind of like looking at this package type column, and is that like an enum that there's like a finite number of packaging types, and all of these will fall into those categories, or is this where do we have criteria for that, or is that just I was just wondering where that term came from.
I was sort of alluding, and this is the first iteration. I was sort of alluding to the is there any specific format that that particular package is distributed using? So, yes, Steve, you had your hand up. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry, I was starting to type an answer to the catalog APIs, but so maybe we'll just take a step back for a minute. But I realized that typing in the chat doesn't actually get captured for recording or notes. So I think the catalog API and the Helm scenario is a really good one because it's an example of where somebody's just trying to get a list of the packages that are available, which in OCI terms is the list of repos, and the catalog API was initially intended for that. The catalog
Doesn't
API
scale.
is not that
Doesn't scale.
right. It doesn't scale. It doesn't support auth. That's why it got deprecated. It didn't get deprecated because the need wasn't there. It's the implementation wasn't capable of being supported across the various implementations. So the scenario is still valid. How do we do that? And then the other one that Helm brought up, which is really good, is the versioning. There's no way to use the tag API to actually understand a versioning concept. So those are both OCI.
Exactly. Like what I see here is, the search API being able to take in parameters for us, for the Helm client to be able to say, hey, give me all, if I look at how Helm is currently, designed in its current repo, non-OCI, it says, give me a list of charts or a list of charts that may be included inside this repository or with this version. And we can go ahead and just enumerate the results on the client. That's what I see this effort really taking hold. I mean, Helm is a perfect example of how we can immediately take advantage of this work.
And the only other thing I wanted to just build in is one of the things we've said is this isn't unique to the OCI work, right? This is also across other package managers. So that's why having the other ones, not just the ones like Carvel and others that are using OCI, which is awesome, right? Which in the goal of please no more underfunded package managers, but of the other package managers that have already solved part of these problems, how did they solve them? Did they address things like auth boundaries? And how can we support that a little more consistently across multiple package managers? So that was part of what I saw as the output of that additional package types that are listed there. And I think the ones that are not OCI based is also really helpful because it gives us a chance to learn from what others have done.
Like for example, to answer that question specifically for apt, right? What does apt do, right? Apt separates the concept of update and upgrade, right? Update, you pull down this packages.gz and it's signed and GPG and all that kind of stuff, right? And then there's the upgrade process, which as far as we're concerned, it's just the download process, right? It just downloads over static HTTP, validates checksums, good to go. Doesn't care. It doesn't actually really care where it gets the darn thing from, right? And that's why it even does it over HTTP typically by default, because who cares? It's going to validate it that it's got the right stuff before it installs it. But they kind of in my mind, they kind of punted on the problem you just described by saying, we're just going to pre-process everything into this big monster thing. We're going to gzip it and it's going to be great. And then they're like, well, now we need multiple places for people to put stuff. So now you add, to your sources.list and you add more sources, right? And they each do the same thing. That's just one way of solving the problem you were talking about. So that could be done in OCI. Like you can map that exact same thing to OCI if you wanted to, right? Upload your catalog artifact, right? Your packages.gz goes in there, and that is what it is. I think that's the wrong answer. I think we'd all probably agree that's the wrong answer, right? But that's the way apt went.
And just because it's so easy for us to want to jump into solutionizing, and I love the way you just kind of captured yourself there, is can we capture the requirements? Like, what are we trying to accomplish? What have the other package managers done to solve some of this? And where did they fall short? Right? Like this is the problem is everybody's trying to do this on a bunch of different package managers. None of us have time to complete them on each one of those. If this working group can bring together those minds to identify what problems we're trying to solve, how we've solved them, then we can go back to these, 6 or 7 different package managers that exist today and finish the climb to that peak of how do you support these capabilities across them. And then I'm hoping that as new artifacts types come up, they'll say, great, I can leverage one of these package managers because they've already implemented the needs of a more robust system. So I'm just trying to avoid us getting into designing the API yet until we finish cataloging, inventorying the different ones, how they've done the solutions, what problems they're trying to solve. Because then I think if we look at what they try to solve and how they try to solve it, we could probably come up with a better idea.
What I'm hearing is a Venn diagram, of things that we would essentially define, I don't know if it's a Venn diagram, but I'm trying to kind of like what you're saying, Steve. I'm trying to understand how to kind of like go take that and implement it. Like as we're going through this, we're finding things that are that we like, that goes in the like pile, right? Then we find things that weren't great, and then we put that in the don't like pile, and then the like overlapping strategies and how those give the characteristics of those systems, and see if that's what we want. Is that this table,
Yeah, I
or
think-
is there another way to convey that concept?
Well, I think you've done great by capturing the table in the first place and just capturing the different ones and getting people involved, right? Because we always want to make it more important to them than us. Like, we want these different package managers to come in with their views, not us trying to understand them. I think once we start getting that, the scalable way of a Venn diagram, because Venn diagram work great for 3, but we have more than 3, is if we could put a list of requirements, like a grid, a list of requirements down the left that have like the heading and then some of the description of the requirement, and then how each package manager, like imagine columns now for the different existing package managers, and did they solve them, red or green? How did they solve them? A link, and then we'd start to get that matrix of what they did well and what they fell short of, right? Like, I think the catalog API is a great example of a good attempt that fell short because there was enough vagueness that when implementations happened, things like auth and scale didn't work. Or the Helm index, was it index.yaml, where that was great, but for in some ways and bad in others, it didn't scale because there was one file that you had to download for all. So I think trying to capture those will really be helpful. So I think, the expanded Venn diagram of a table.
Well, I think that to build on top of that is we need to create a feedback form to take in inputs from these different groups. And then that can go into a more of a master spreadsheet, whatever you want to call it, that we can then Venn diagram out of that.
I credit Ram for the table, by the way. So I think that was his handiwork. I thought that was a really great approach to like everybody's kind of saying, is getting that input, or soliciting engagement from the stakeholders of those package managers.
I just jumped in there, kind of thinking about like old like REST kind of standards and SOAP and API standards. Sorry, SOAP is a bad word, I'm sure. But like each one of these kind of has like a way that the package gets transported. I mean, they're all HTTP, but like there's probably different APIs for each one, like what that URL looks like and what the JSON, format looks like. So each one is going to have a different transfer protocol. Like OCI distribution is an example of, I guess, the specifics of that. Like, I don't know what Deb and RPM, look like internally. I put a couple other columns, like the package format, like, is it a zip? Is it, a tarball? Is it just a file? I don't know, other things. And then I put internal format. I don't know, maybe that's not as relevant. But I'm just thinking like that might be a point of comparison. Like maybe we get them all in the same transport protocol to begin with or something.
You're saying like the difference between like an RPM and like a Yum repository or a DNF repository. They're both part of the package manager. Is that what you're saying?
What I'm kind of saying is like if I run DNF, upgrade, then it makes a bunch of HTTP calls, to pull the latest. What API? What does that look like? What is the transport, for depackage and how like PyPI? If I do a pip install, it's also making some sort of call, expecting some sort of response. Like those are probably all documented somewhere, and they're probably all pretty similar, honestly. So that's what I was thinking with that column. I'm searching Google now to fill in the blanks. So like just to stay static. So that's if we just say static, then of course it's HTTP, but what does the Open API spec look like? Just to,
do we have to go that low to like the API spec level, or can we? I bet there's some stuff we could agree on that we don't care about. So like for example, I'm kind of flipping your question on the opposite side, right? Like what columns do we not want? And one might argue we do not want to, we don't care about the artifact itself, right? What is actually in the artifact? That is opaque data, you know. So in a sense, does it matter whether it's a zip or a tar.gz or a, you know, Z standard? It you know, it kind of does, but for our purposes, it really doesn't. I mean, we're talking about finding what you want, finding the artifact and downloading it. After that, our hands are done, right? We're free of it. So maybe we can scope.
It's like TCP/IP. You hand it up to the application layer, and it says, "Oh, it's a Python package. I know what to do with it." But at the transport layer, it's HTTP, a blob. That's it.
Right. But now they're the format of their like metadata, right? I have an apt package, a Debian package, and it depends on package XYZ. Here's its description. Those kinds of things. We don't need like that. I think that might be useful to say, oh, this is JSON. In Debian case, it's not. It's like, you know, more INI looking thing. Those package control file things are just custom, right?
Yeah, I think their metadata ends up in like a repo.xml next door too. Yeah.
Yeah, it does. So Helm with the index.json file, the chart museum kind of approach, and apt with the packages.gz that I was talking about they all fit into the category in my mind called like the pre-join approach to solving the problem. So they're if it was in a database, it's kind of like pre-joining it. Like you're just like smashing it all together, and you have to keep, and that's a hot record. You got to keep updating. You're doing the join operation or whatever that you need to do on insert, not upon a retrieval or search, right? And that has all sorts of weird problems associated with it. But I think it's useful maybe to have a column to say some. I'm not sure if pre-join is the wrong word, but something like how they deal with that. I don't know.
I hear you. To me, I think of normalization and denormalization. I think that's the term in databases.
Yeah, and you're also touching on the spot that we struggle sometimes with is what can be done on the client, what can be done on the server, right? Because there's client database is a perfect example of client server technologies. Like what is actually possible on the client that scales? That was the problem with the helm.index.yaml. You know, great initial solution, and that's why we kind of evolved past it as it got started, and now we evolve. What can we do that, yes, there is some server-side stuff that is needed, which, yes, it has to be implemented on these bigger package managers, but here's the benefit as a result, because some things just don't scale, whether it be concurrency or there's just a bunch of different pieces that can happen if you're trying to have the client push up some kind of quote index. I'm trying to be careful with the word index, where if you're pushing up individual pieces of data and the server side is processing it and then can give you back an index, but the index is dynamically created because it's managing that on the server, then you get a much more scalable thing. And one of the other pieces that I'll add to that is I think, and I want to make sure we capture this and I'll go back to look at the docs, is there's a balance there between public and private that I think we sometimes forget is when you're doing something that's all public, you don't think about auth because everything's public. So I can list all the packages, I can list all the versions. When, you know, as we as an industry are continuing to evolve where we have these private instances of the public content, then you have a package manager that has multiple packages that not all auth is created equal across all of them. So if Josh and I are on the same team, then, we're in the same company, but on different teams, I may not see the packages that he has in that because we have different auth scopes. And that's one of the places that I think that we've missed in the past that has caused, and it's one of the reasons why the catalog API didn't work out. So I just like us to add that auth requirement that I can query a registry for a list of something, and it should only return the things that I have access to. So another one of those server-side processing things, right? Because you don't want the server creating some file, or you don't want the client pushing up a file that says, here's all the list of stuff, and then Josh tries to download it, and he now gets disclosure of information he shouldn't be able to see, just as an example.
Which is also a great counterexample of why the denormalization or the catalog or index approach just plain doesn't work. Like you can't create catalogs for every possible set of all your roles that you have. Like
Right.
you
But you
could, but
could
it's a
compute it.
nightmare.
Well, what's interesting is, and this is where we've done this in some of the OCI stuff, is the response is a file. The response is, quote, an index, but it's dynamically generated. So there's a workaround that says the client can push it, which just scares the hell out of me. But we should separate out what the response is, whether it was statically pushed or dynamically generated. And dynamically generated also means there can be caching, blah, 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 blah. But it's the response that we want. How the response gets generated, to your point, is, you know, can be well, denormalized, normalized. I have to think about how I want to think about it there, but it could be dynamically computed, is my point. And the dynamic could be based on a filter. Give me all the repos that contain this or start with this, and always only give me a response that I have access to, right? So those are two pivots of that filter criteria. One of them is implied. I should only ever get the things that I have permission to, but I could always ask a question, but you know, give me all the things I don't have access to. Like, you know, raise your hand if you're not here. There's certain implications that are captured in those requirements.
I was just gonna ask if anybody here is participating in OCI's, or don't they have an auth working group? Or no.
Several of us are. Myself, Rob, looking to see if I see anybody else in here. But yeah, there are a few of us here.
Okay.
So Brandon,
And-
when you think of the
yeah.
auth scope in that group, do you think of it as more of, how do I provide, like, what is the scope of that? Would it incorporate some of these aspects of what do I have permissions to?
Yeah, the initial focus is to start and say, let's document what is in the Docker spec and other stuff today, try to capture a bunch of what exists right now, with the idea that we want to make sure whatever we document and standardize into a spec allows future functionality. And this could be future functionality where you're talking about things that are getting more granular, authentication or authentication into various extensions. So if someone has an extension like our search API or something like that, you could have a special auth for that.
Because one of the things I thought, that's why I'm asking, is there's a whole different types of what are the auth types that are even supported, so that we could have a little more consistency across the registry implementations. That alone is a big challenge. I wasn't sure if that's the scope, or it's also, once I have an identifier of who I am through whatever the different types, what do I have access to? Because to some extent that problem is somewhat solved in the APIs that registries already support. Which is again why catalog got cut, because it didn't support it. So the ones that do are there. So that's why I'm kind of asking, is what's the boundary? Is it sounds like more it's auth types, and how do we enable consistency across registries?
It's looking to standardize the entire spec. Since we don't have it in OCI at all today, we're looking to say, when a client comes to authenticate into a registry, what's the whole workflow, what APIs are going to happen, what headers they need to look at. So we're going through the whole process. Like I say, the initial focus is going to be looking at what exists today and just trying to get that captured, just like we did for the initial days of OCI, and we were just forming and said, let's capture what Docker did for the Docker images. That's kind of how we scoped it back then. But we are definitely thinking about use cases beyond that. And so we say today we're going to do a push or a pull of an image. We might have a lot more methods than just push and a pull. We have stuff that's scoped to just a repository. We might have stuff that's scoped to a lot of different areas other than just a repository. So we're trying to keep our vision open for whatever we create so that we don't block off any long-term extensions there.
Just, I wanted to kind of refocus on the agenda and kind of, given the conversation that we've been having here around the research we're doing, and specifically I think around this table, the document, do we want to discuss our approach to this anymore before we go forward and continue engaging in this research? Do we want this document to have convey something else that we don't currently have, and also we're going to be going to this new repo soon, right? So it doesn't have to be all centered around this document, but just kind of trying to get some action items for the working group so we can go forward here for the next 2 weeks.
One thing I'll share with the docs that we've created, say in the platforms working group, is that it tends to take a little while for people to look at it, think about it, comment on it. So leaving it open for another couple weeks, even maybe a little longer, you will probably get a lot more insights and stuff. And then we could pick up, like you could choose out, say, Ram and Alex, the couple, hot items that we want to discuss in live, in 2 weeks.
Okay, that's great. I think if nobody else objects, do we have do we have a good approach here with this document going forward for the next 2 weeks? Is what we have in this document, or the how it's structured, is this going to do the job here until we reconvene, or do we need something else? I think the table is a great addition to it, and just asking for some ideas before we. I really wanted to also get to what Josh had brought up, having like a round table or a part of the meeting for that. So
Yeah, just I think maybe to add to our meeting is there's a concept like the agenda bashing is like the first item. Does somebody have something new and interesting that they'd like to add to the agenda that we didn't get on the agenda a week before? Then we just decide like, hey, yeah, this is great, and this is what the chairs would facilitate. That seems like a good thing to add to the process. For the next 2 weeks, I think if we can continue with what we've done with that current list of package managers and pointers or any summary as what I've seen in there, that'd be great. And maybe we start the table. Here is the list of we gotta figure out what we call them, requirements, scenarios, use cases, but whatever that first column is that reads down the left, and then we start putting the package managers, across the right. If we can start iterating on that structure, your table version of the Venn diagram, we could experiment with that over the next 2 weeks also. So it's kind of, let's continue on one of the things we've already started, and let's add another piece that builds on it. We'll see how they start to correlate. You're muted, Alex.
Oh, you're talking to me.
Steve, is that something that you could jump into the doc and kind of like build out like your initial thoughts on that, so we could expand that with a different additional criteria as it becomes known through our research?
Yeah, I can do that on Monday.
By the way, I just found I'm searching around for transport protocols, and Google has this. I'm going to put it in the chat. I put it into our long-term chat, but they've got this thing. Maybe this is a lot of what we're trying to do. This thing deps.dev, where there seem to be putting a layer over the top of NPM, PyPI, all these. I just found it now, but let me share it with you all. Maybe give us some thoughts.
That's Guac. That's backed by Guac, right?
Honestly, I don't know. I just discovered it, and I'm like, wow, this could be pretty
I don't
interesting.
I don't think it's backed by Guac. I think Guac uses this.
Okay.
Just housekeeping, because I usually do this when I'm on a computer. Is somebody capturing the chat, the interesting things in chat, into the doc?
It is recorded. I usually just get the video and just post that, but I can give you the notes too after.
Does the video capture chat sessions?
No, but the Zoom does. It's just a separate file, so I have to.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's what I just while we're going along. I mean, I'd also continue to encourage folks as we're like, I've got to the point where I almost want to disable the chat session so that we can put things in the doc instead. But you know, I hate the stick versus carrot model. It's just there's a bunch of
Okay.
great stuff in chat that I hate losing.
One other question I had for you also, looking at this chart, I know one of our goals, I missed the last meeting, so forgive me, but I thought we're trying to search within artifacts for certain, you know, well-known attributes like SBOM or attestation. Is this related to that? Is this separate?
I think it's a yes. I mean, I think what we're discovering is how do you find the artifacts in the first place? That's what I took as that catalog API is, and then once you found them, because you have to find them to know to search into them to some extent. You don't have to. You start with, I know there's a package there. So I think it's an and. It's another one of those ands. And
Yeah,
that's
that
where I
makes
think
sense.
Alex gets excited, is he's trying to brainstorm an idea of how do you generically do it? Because my model has been, there's some generic attributes that you could put on all package types that you could search. It doesn't matter whether it's a thing or a thing or a foo or a bar. But then how do you search into specific content types like SPDX or Cyclone or Vex or the next content type that if you tried to put all of their values into the generic, I'll just say annotations or labels or whatever, then you kind of defeat the fact that they have a document form in the first place. So my thought has been that there's a generic set that everybody gets benefit because the individual packages know to put them in that. And the ones that have more specialized content where the entire purpose of their artifact is to list stuff, that one package manager / registry would have to opt into knowing how to parse those types. It's not a hugely scalable, but it's and that's the part where I'm excited to see what Alex is proposing, because he's kind of thinking, how could you do it more generically? And you know, I don't know if it's a JSON DB kind of thing or what, but we're running ahead. That's the piece is, can we capture the requirements? Because then we'll be able to figure out which one of those might be more scalable and approachable.
Thanks.
Since you invoked my name and interest, raise my hand. One of the we went into I think we're Steve, I think our work is going to be kind of based a lot of the output of our upcoming research is kind of based on the table you're talking about. So I have a comfortability with the next 2 weeks of work that we've defined, continue our investigation of these package managers, and then bubbling those characteristics up into this chart or matrix. And so I don't know. I did have something to share for the roundtable if we're at that, but I just want to make sure that we flushed out the research topic before we move ahead in the agenda.
I have one question based on what Steve and Alex, what you guys just described. I got it now. Like it's kind of layers. First, we got to do the transport layer. Then you got to get into the package. Then we can talk about attributes in there. One thing, Steve, when you said that, I want to bring up a term, and maybe Knative has something called duck types. And it's also in other languages like mix-ins, where like you might have your core content type, but then you also say this is a searchable or something, or a SBOMable, and then there would be just an attribute SBOM, but all the rest of the content type, you know, would retain, you know, it's a PyPI package or an NPM. Is that what you're kind of getting at? Like we standard attribute, even though the rest of the content type we don't touch?
Sort of, it sounds like it. I mean, I remember the mix-in stuff. But again,
Yeah.
so what
like
I'd
all
love
Kubernetes
to do,
resources should have replicas. Don't you call it count, and I'll call it replicas, and somebody else calls
right.
it number. I don't know.
Yeah, there's a schema that if everybody agrees to, then it's universally searchable across all. The thing that I've been playing with is what are the common types, and so we should all put like the name of the package, the repo name, the name of the package. Those make sense. The version, I think, you know, we get caught up in tags, which are free-form strings versus semantic versioning. What could be done that is generic? But if everything was generic, then why do we have all these different package types? So there's we need to figure out a way how to have that creative freedom to not limit somebody coming up with something new. So what is that escape route? So that's part of why, like, I just think going back to capturing the requirements, capturing the different things. But what you're actually bringing up is a great thing, is maybe we should have a table that says, by the way, here's how just like the different package managers have solved these problems, here's the different technologies that have been used also. So mix-ins and forgot the other one you mentioned, not Carvel, what was, anyway, whatever the other ones are, we can put those at the duct type. Sorry, thank you, duct types. Yeah. If we start putting those at the bottom, those can help foster ideas. Like, I don't want to ever lose concepts. It's just how do we capture them and continue to have this flowing conversation that we don't start, we don't assume a solution. We start with capturing the requirements and fill in those gaps.
I was just gonna really quickly say, I think this is kind of this is what you guys are talking about, is like, if you look at in the in-toto specification and you look at the in the statement, you have the predicate type, and you also have like the subject type. And you know, I think that we already have the things available to us to be able to go retrieve a resource type's definition. And you could even convey additional logic within that to say, like, this is how you interact with this, or even reference an interface that you could use to interact with that resource. So that's kind of like my thoughts on this, is like, you don't have to duct type anything. You just have to point to that resource's definition, which you could optionally invoke an interface from to interact with whatever the subject or the predicate or the object. I'm using semantic triples as the basis of like where I'm coming at with this, but that's, I don't know if that concept can be addressed within this research doc, or if that exists outside of in the next you know, where we're going with that.
So I just wanted to ask a quick clarifying question. So when we're thinking about these common attributes, the simple case, that's the case I can get my brain around right now. The version, the name, the whatever, where in OCI are those stored, do we think? I'm not trying, I mean, I'm kind of crossing the line into solution engineering, but I want to, just for clarity in my own mind, is that a manifest thing or is that a config thing? I'm curious what you guys are thinking about with respect to that.
It's really hard to answer that without like jumping into like the solution I'm working on right now. So like I want to like abstain from that. Like
All right, we'll leave it as TBD. Keep it nebulous.
Okay, so I saw Joe Lanford jumped into this. I didn't know if he's known by the community here. Joe, you missed like the introductions, but we usually have like a session at the beginning where we just open it up for introductions and kind of like what your interests are with regard to artifacts or otherwise.
Yeah, sorry I was late. So I'm from Red Hat. I'm one of the architects for OLM, which is the Operator Lifecycle Manager, if you're not familiar. And we've got a lot of similar thoughts, well, not necessarily thoughts or opinions necessarily, but we have a lot of use cases around obviously catalogs and packages in terms of shipping around and having repositories of. In the past, it's been specifically sort of opinionated towards Kubernetes operators, but we've started thinking more about things that are a little bit more generic than that. So extensions or bundles of arbitrary manifests or Helm charts or, you know, whatever. So my interest is in trying to figure out how we want to distribute all of this stuff. And I've been a little bit aware of the OCI artifact spec stuff that's going on. So I've been sort of tinkering with, storing all of these things sort of as OCI artifacts. Somewhat like Helm is doing, but even going further into the catalog space as well. So yeah. Thanks, Alex.
Yeah, you kind of got the fire hose version of the working group here. You joined it. We were kind of like in it. Did you have any questions about like? I'm assuming you've seen the charter or like have some context, but like the nature of the conversations that we're having, is that I guess somehow expected, or do you have anything else that you feel like needs to be addressed in the context of that or otherwise?
I don't think so. Yeah, I mean, like the talk about like we're literally working on a catalog API ourselves right now, so I think it's good timing just to figure this out and see if there's like a way that we can all work together. So yeah, I mean, all of the conversation made sense for the most part for me.
Love it. Would love to hear what you guys are doing, what you like, what you don't like, and incorporate that feedback.
Yeah, and I think Andy Goldstein was here a week, last meeting or maybe the meeting before that. So he and I worked together. So yeah, both of us are interested in participating and giving you guys at least OLM's perspective on stuff.
Do you have a section you could?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Did you? And I'm sorry, I'm not looking at the doc. If you could put whatever research you feel comfortable with putting it in that doc, would love to leverage that, and just so people can read asynchronously.
Sure. Yeah, there's a section already. That stuff is about our file-based catalogs. I've been doing even more tinkering. I've got a repo that's got like OLM OCI thoughts in it. So I can drop that in there too. A lot of it is still very, very much in flux though, so it doesn't mean anything one way or the other. But yeah, I'll drop it in there.
Yeah, my link to the file-based catalogs is me dating myself as far as my knowledge of the state of the art with OLM. So
I mean, that is the state of the art in public. So that's as good as we've started talking about. But we're already thinking about what's next. So especially with the OCI artifact stuff sort of seeming to be more mature now, I've started to think more about how we might use that rather than what we've got now.
One thing that I think is really cool from operator framework, which I've had my eye on for like a year, is a standard controller that runs in Kubernetes that could unbundle and deploy many artifact types instead of having to every unbundler and deployer. It needs another controller, like image package needs one and OLM needs one, and everything that comes next. So they've got some work going on that could be pretty cool.
Yeah, so that we've got a project called Ruckpack. That's what you're referring to, I think, Josh. That is also still very much in development, and we're tinkering with it too. We're probably going to change it a little bit, but the idea is the same. And we're actually Andy has some history with Carvel, so we're taking some inspiration from CAP and CAP controller and looking at those APIs. So yeah, I think like the extensibility of it and being able to consume different package types using sort of one API would be good.
in the last meeting, I was being kind of campy and throwing around this term expert witness, right? But I would like to kind of throw that back out here, and can we carve out a section of these meetings, or maybe even have breakout sessions where we have a presenter going over their solution like this? I mean, would there be any benefit in that, or do we want this to be purely asynchronous research? I mean, I guess I'm just throwing that out there for the group. Is there any appetite from getting like 15-minute or 10-minute presentation within in these or otherwise?
If it's relevant to the group, one thing, yeah, definitely. I mean, I was just gonna say, definitely, if it's relevant to our work, if it's like a concept or idea, which is really valuable. I'm just jumping in to say you don't want just random project presentations, because that could be distracting. People just come and do quasi marketing.
Yeah, I
Okay.
think we keep on coming back to, if we can get a list of requirements. I think we want people to feel like they're passionate to show off with their work, right? Because that's the whole point, is how do we get people engaged? But to exactly what Josh said, is how do we do it constructively? So I think as we start to capture the list of needs, if somebody's got a demo or something, they can talk about how they solved that problem and maybe what worked and what didn't work. Those are great things to be able to present.
So going forward, if I don't know, should we put this in the meeting notes? Like if somebody wants to sign up for like a presentation spot or something, then just hit us up in chat. That's something I think we can put in the header of the agenda, maybe just directing people, opening making something where people feel welcome to engage that way. Okay. We are almost at time. I guess I don't know if anybody has anything they feel like they wanted to bring to the table here that they haven't got a chance to, or we've missed anything. Maybe 5 more minutes if anybody wants to throw anything out there.
Just love the progress. I mean, it's never as fast as we want, but getting people engaged and getting the information captured is super helpful. And I'm hoping people continue to see, the value. And if they don't, voice it. Like, let's hear what are the challenges, rather than just stay silent. Do you see value from it? If not, why? And what can we do to solve it, if there's even a problem? But I think we agree there's a problem. Are we taking the right steps to solve the problem of how do we understand artifacts across different package managers and continue to make them more robust to solve the continuing growing needs?
Yeah, thanks, Steve. So just to round us out, we have 2 action items coming out of this meeting, aside from all the other admin stuff that Josh has to do. Just kidding, Josh. We need to do the website working group entry, and Steve took on loosely define that table, and that's in addition to the regular research that the group has already initiated. Did I miss anything outside of those 2 specific action items?
Just
Okay.
keep working on this doc. Did you say that? Did I miss that? Just keep adding comments.
I used a lot of words, so maybe my
Sorry.
delivery
That
was
just right.
imprecise.
I think working on the doc until we can get the repo done, and then we'll figure out how to divide the doc up into Markdown and a Git repo, whether it be PRs or issues or whatever.
I think that takes us to time. These meetings have been, I think they've been good. So that's my opinion. Sorry, I threw it out there at the end, but thank you very much. And please engage in chat. Yeah.
Thanks, Alex. Have a good weekend, everyone. Enjoy
Thanks, folks.
your race over there, Steve.
Thanks, everybody. Enjoy your weekend, whatever you're doing. Enjoy the sun while it's around.
Exactly.
Enjoy that boat, Steve.
Oh, there's a ferry back there right now. See you later, folks.